Good day, everybody. My name is Nickolas, as David said. What I'm here today to talk about is a topic we call conversational computing and some of the trends we're seeing in the industry around this, and we're going to give a little demonstration as well, have a little bit of fun if all goes well. So what's changing? Our colleagues next door have had the chance to talk to several of our colleagues next door and in the room about deep learning and computer intelligence and machine intelligence. So really one of the things that's happening is we're all becoming data scientists, which is very disruptive across the industry and will continue to be so for the next decade. So we're seeing the opening up of the science of data to a broader audience, and we're applying it to a variety of tasks in hand. Some of what's driving this a bit is smart data discovery. We've got technologies that are doing deep permutations and deep looking at data. We just heard 1.5 terabytes of data. We've got technologies for big data analyzing that, enabling a new class of user to approach the data, ask the what happened, why it happened, what will happen, and moving to the closed system of what should happen with this data. We're also seeing knowledge workers employing robotic process automation to configure software robots to really help them help their day-to-day activities and automate their own processes and to be much more efficient and effective doing things like such things as claim processing and whatnot. So really the question here is, how do we enable non-data scientists to put all this data to work, the so-called last mile of analytics? So some of what's pushing that is the change in information experience. It's really evolving to be a continuous, multi-modal, experiential kind of model. We get up in the morning, we interact with our mobile devices or ambient devices, and we continuously probe, prod, move it. We're masters of time, we wish, we hope. We replay, we record our data, we analyze our data, we analyze it in real time and at rest. Also what we see is the capabilities around ambient and perceptual intelligence are becoming more and more possible and evolving. That's around vision, speech, and text analytics. Our environments are becoming aware of us, how we feel, how we sound, they're reacting to us. We have devices we're wearing that say you're having a bad day, here's what you got to do to have a good day. So it's becoming very immersive and experiential, all in the spirit of serving your needs better and recognizing what your intent is. So our ambient world is becoming much more intelligent, and we're interacting with the world in new and different ways. So what if we could interact with our devices in such a way that it's beyond just asking it to perform static tasks? What if we could teach our devices to do new and interesting things, save those off, have those run for us when we want, how we want, and during our day's activity? So what we're really doing here, going way, way back, is we're programming by example. And the example in this case is in the form of a conversation. Do what I do, or do what I say, and do what I do. So in many ways, this emerging area of zero UI is much easier to interact with and create programs for. An example is we were doing some work around enabling a line of business user to use big data analytics from our colleagues next door. And we were wrestling with how to be very prescriptive along the way. Because line of businesses don't want to get into the details, they just have the questions that they want to ask. So we were wrestling with how you do this UI, and we took a step back and said, well, what if we kind of began to just say, I want to ask the computer to carry out these tasks. I really want to, what better way to prescribe is there than to describe? So we took a step back, we started experimenting with some technologies out there, and that's what I want to kind of show you next. So with that, the demo is a day in a life, how I use speech to interact with my day's activities, analyze my activities, my data, do some research on my data. I'm going to be moving from home to work, to my commute and back. And I'm really thinking about creating reusable conversations from interchanges that I have with the devices in my life. And then I want to call those from anywhere in my experience of my day and reuse those. So kind of think of it as a verbal mashup or a verbal playlist, if you will. So let's start. Alexa, start my day.
Good day. You can ask me about your day's activities. You can ask me what has happened since we last spoke, to check your stocks, or you can revisit our previous conversations.
Why did you get me up so early?
I noticed the commute time this morning was much longer than anticipated, and given your calendar today, I thought you might miss the rework conference meeting.
What happened since last we spoke?
Taking a quick look at your emails, calendar entries, documents, and presentations, I noticed there is a large amount of content regarding the rework conference. Shall I have a deeper look?
Yes.
There is a great deal of discussion around Apache Spark, analytics, visualizations, and microservices.
Alexa, ask News to search for those terms.
Okay, I'll search Alchemy breaking news for those terms. Would you like me to include sentiment as well?
Yes.
What level of sentiment would you like? You can say highly positive, positive, negative, or highly negative.
Positive.
I found 10 documents. Given the legend of -1 being very negative and 1 being very positive, these documents scored a 0.48. You can ask me to read the titles, or read the summaries if you like.
Read the titles.
First article, Data Analytics with Apache Spark and Cassandra. Next article, Apache Spark, Utilizing Access Point Wi-Fi Data.
Alexa,
Cloudy on work.
Stop, please.
Okay, you can ask me to read the summaries if you like, or ask for help.
We can discuss the summaries on the way to work.
Okay, I'll make the summaries available for playback on your mobile device.
Alexa, exit. So the idea here is we are beginning to query the user. We're beginning to take information from the user. We're beginning to analyze the user's inputs and create a conversation that we can then record and play back. You'll notice in the beginning, I asked, it was telling me about my commute. I had a previous conversation that said, if my commute from this point to my home is longer than this, and I happen to be in the Hilton up in Angel, is longer, set my alarm clock to get me up earlier so I can make my meeting or make the meeting I'm getting to. So you can string conversations together to do interesting things. So let's jump back into the conversation. Alexa, Alexa, ask news.
Go ahead with your question.
Alexa, stop. Alexa, ask news.
Welcome to Alchemy Breaking News. I provide access to Alchemy's 12 semantic text analysis APIs using natural language processing. You can ask me to find news by saying search the news for terms.
Alexa, save this conversation.
Sure, you can name the conversation by saying call this conversation daily briefing.
Call this conversation daily briefing.
You can now invoke this conversation by saying daily briefing. I will then replay the conversation, only sharing outcomes of the conversation. A verbal mashup of sorts.
Tell us about conversations.
I can save and replay our conversations. As we interact, I gather various inputs from you. For example, the terms and sentiment used for the Alchemy search service. I can then rerun the conversation. I can either reprompt you for the inputs or use the conversation to derive the values. You name the conversation and I'll invoke it on command, or I can schedule it to run automatically.
Can you give us some examples?
Okay, we created a conversation that wired traffic delays to alarm clock settings that was saved and scheduled to run each morning. We can also combine conversations into more sophisticated flows. For example, using concept extraction over a set of documents, feeding the findings into a breaking news search and communicating the findings either verbally or visually. Finally, you can also ask me to alert you if certain triggers occur. For example, sales are dipping below a threshold.
Okay, so now I've kind of transitioned my morning, my ambient device. I've transitioned, I've traveled to work, I'm arriving at work, and I want the same experience to follow me on the desktop device, and we'll use it here as well. Alexa, ask business. Alexa, ask business.
Business is good. Sales are up 15% and customer satisfaction is at 79%.
Get sales data.
I found sales data. You can display it in a table, graph, or summarize it.
Show table.
Showing table for all fields.
Show graph.
Showing a line graph for all fields.
Show a bar chart for appliances.
Showing a bar graph of appliances.
Alexa, exit. So you can bring it in to work with you as well, interact with it using the speech capabilities built into these devices as well. It's not just this device. And so, Alexa, ask my day, where should I be right now?
You should be at the Rework conference meeting. You can ask me to take roll, research the attendee's information signature, record the meeting, or to translate the meeting and provide augmented information.
So one thing that's interesting is as we go to meetings, we heard earlier about destinations coming to us. Well, meetings can come to us as well. And one of the things that's quite interesting is as we meet, as you go to meetings, you can get folks' digital signatures. You know, what are you interacting with folks about? What's going on? What are they doing online? You can bring their information bubble, analyze their information, and bring all that up in real time. And another example is what you all are tweeting or talking or thinking or discussing. I could be looking at up here as well, right? So we can drive new and interesting interactions that way as well. Okay, finally, Alexa, tell Twitter to track reworktech.
I'm now tracking sentiment for reworktech. You can ask me for updates by saying, provide status on reworktech.
Tell us about the future.
I am the future. Well, at least part of it. I am part of a growing number of devices and services that work together to provide ambient intelligence. I will not pass the Turing test. I work best in a directed conversational style of short interactions. Our conversations are well permuted. That is, I am provided with a multitude of possible utterances and I extract tagged pieces of information out of the utterance and provide that as input to the conversation.
Thank you.
You are quite welcome.
Okay, so that's the Alexa part of the demonstration. So let me give you a little bit of what's behind this so you can have a look at that, which I kind of flipped to a little earlier. So we're running on a plug here. We're running on our Bluemix paths. But really what we're doing and what I want to show you all is we're using a variety of services. Services are the spice of creativity. We heard, I think, this morning from David, creativity is about combination. Well, what we're doing here is we're combining services in new and interesting ways, and we're driving that through conversation. We have a kind of a traditional web app. This little web app we showed you is a real simple web application, but we can come at it with a multitude of devices. It can be your own application as well. And what we're really doing are ingesting and using these services on the back end. Can have a multitude of other devices here as well. You know, in this space, we're using Alexa to show this. I can use my desktop, my phone as well in this space. So, are we at the singularity? Well, after the last two talks, we're getting closer, I think. Very interesting. We're getting incrementally closer. As Alexa mentioned, there's kind of template-driven understanding of the language and deep understanding of the language. But it's a great time to be slinging code or be creative about combining these services. The world is kind of our mashup. It's really easy to do things like this nowadays. The disruption of the language that I believe is going to be interesting over the coming years. And again, what better way to prescribe is there than to describe what you want to do with the machine? And with that, thank you.
Thank you very, very much.